The taxi came to a slow halt just before the gravel driveway I hadn't seen in nearly a year. As I stepped out, my boots still coated in the tan dust of Afghanistan, a sharp breath escaped me. I had imagined this moment 1,000 times, surprising my mother with an early return, finally lying in my own bed again, maybe even hearing the creak of the old porch swing. But what I saw instead nearly brought me to my knees. Where my family's cottage once stood, with its blue shutters and white picket trim, now sat a neatly fenced-in dog park. 3 golden retrievers raced after a neon frisbee across what used to be my living room. A woman in yoga pants gave me a quick once-over before scolding her poodle for sniffing at my duffel bag. I might have thought I was at the wrong address if it weren't for one thing. The tall oak tree still standing beside the sidewalk, the one I'd carved my name into before deployment. My name was still there, weathered but clear. It was my land. Or it used to be. Now, a sleek metal sign announced, Willow Ridge Community Park, sponsored by the Willow Ridge Homeowners Association. Beneath it, a plaque read, dedicated to peaceful living and communal joy. My heart pounded in my chest louder than gunfire. I stopped a couple walking by, their smoothies sloshing lazily in plastic cups. I asked what happened to the house that once stood here. The man shrugged. Some government guy didn't pay his taxes. HOA took it over and turned it into a park. He said it like he was talking about changing cable providers. I was the so-called government guy. Something in me snapped. Not anger, not even sorrow. Just a numb, cold disbelief. I had survived ambushes and buried friends overseas, only to come home and find the enemy dressed in loafers and designer sunglasses. For the next few hours, I bounced from one government office to another like a pinball. County records stated the property had been repossessed for tax delinquency 6 months prior. Except I had filed for military tax exemption before I ever left. When I brought it up, the clerk scratched her head and told me to speak with the HOA. That was the first time I heard the name Karen Mallister. I found her in the community clubhouse, holding court like a suburban monarch with a glass of rose. The room was adorned with certificates of appreciation, all self-awarded, and a blown-up portrait of her titled Founding Mother. She was in the middle of chastising a teenage girl for stringing fairy lights on her backyard fence that I cleared my throat and introduced myself, explaining I used to own the property at 1428 Maple Trail. Her lips curled into a condescending smirk. She flipped through a binder and announced, "Oh yes, that lot was declared unclaimed and transferred to HOA custody per subdivision protocol." I told her I was active-duty military and had federal exemption from such seizures. She cut me off with a sip of wine. "Maybe you should have thought about that before abandoning your responsibilities for some overseas adventure." That silence afterward was suffocating. I reminded her that under federal law, deployed military personnel are protected from property forfeiture. She offered me a parcel of land behind the dumpsters instead. "We can work something out, soldier," she said like she was offering a charity handout. That night, I checked into a motel on the edge of town. I sat there in the dark, watching shadows stretch across the ceiling, my soul still deployed, not in Afghanistan, but in a war I hadn't expected to fight. The next morning, I called Luis Ortega. He owed me a favor for pulling him out of a flaming convoy years ago. Luis worked cyber investigations with a federal agency now. I gave him the rundown, and within hours, he was deep in databases. What he found chilled me. Forged signatures, retrofitted meeting minutes, land transactions to shell companies connected to Karen's cousin. It wasn't an isolated seizure, it was a pattern. The HOA had manufactured a fake paper trail. Worse, Luis found an email from Karen joking that I'd probably never come back, and if I did, she'd just salute and ignore me that I had considered court. But Karen had shields. Money, lawyers, cronies. Then I remembered something Colonel Trent once told me. "If you need help back home, don't hesitate." I called. He listened. When I finished, he asked for GPS coordinates and a list of structures involved. Then, he asked, "You want this quiet or dramatic?" "Dramatic," I said. 3 weeks later, Willow Ridge was about to find out what justice looked like in uniform. The military called it Operation Civic Shield. They designated the land, along with much of the HOA-controlled space, a live simulation zone for urban training. Light vehicles, tents, and disaster response units began rolling into the neighborhood. Karen and the other residents were clueless. I watched from an unmarked SUV as soldiers cordoned off parkland, mapped drainage systems, and erected tents on HOA gardens. Karen emerged from her home in a satin robe and a mug that read Queen Bee of the Ridge. When a commanding officer handed her sealed documents authorizing temporary military occupation, her face drained of color. She shouted something about civil liberties, but was ignored. A polite soldier handed her a legal hotline number and walked away. Karen turned crimson when she saw me approach. "You," she spat. "That land you stole," I said quietly, "is coming back to me." The operation escalated. The clubhouse became a command post. Her wine fridge was filled with water bottles. Her private backyard hosted a drone station. Her living room became a map room. The news caught wind. Reporters swarmed. One asked what she had to say to the veteran whose home was razed while he served. Karen fumbled with legalese. The footage of her yelling at a soldier went viral by sundown. Luis kept digging. 5 more homes traced to illegal land grabs. He found a video recording of Karen in a board meeting, mocking veterans and laughing about bulldozing my house that I forwarded it to the press with a single line, "I'm home now." The internet erupted. The Department of Veterans Affairs released a statement. Civil rights groups offered legal assistance. Karen's cousin was subpoenaed. The contractor who demolished my home began cooperating with federal agents. Weeks in, Judge Margot Winslow issued a temporary injunction, dissolving the HOA and freezing its assets pending full investigation. Residents were informed they'd have to validate ownership of their homes. Karen tried to hold a press conference. Residents drowned her out chanting, "We stand with Ramirez." She tried every contact she had. No one returned her calls. Her reign was over as the military began packing up. I stood on the cleared ground where my home once stood. Engineers had flagged the foundation. One even handed me building plans modeled off old photos that a wooden sign was planted near the entrance. "This land has been reclaimed with honor." I placed the first nail in the porch frame myself. The new community took shape. Neighbors, once silent under Karen's rule, brought meals and offered help. Donations poured in from across the country. The Veterans Association helped fund the rebuild. I declined leadership but helped draft the new charter, including a clause ensuring deployed military members could never again lose their homes. They called it the Ramirez Clause. Karen left town in disgrace. Her house became a federal review center. Boxes of shredded documents were recovered from her garage. She was charged with conspiracy, fraud, and obstruction that I never raised my voice. Never raised a hand. I just came home, exposed the truth, and let justice do the rest. Now, the porch swing is back. The flag waves high. And every evening, neighbors stop by just to say hello. They tried to erase me while I was away I came back and reclaimed their entire world. One signature. One soldier. One nail at a time.